The world's most famous cinematic spy is facing an uncertain future, but it's not deadly lasers, metal-toothed henchmen, or doomsday satellites putting him at risk. It's something far more sinister: studio politics. Unfolding behind the scenes, creative clashes have stalled development on the next Bond film. And as you'll find out today, time may be running out.
Bond. James Bond.
Though he's been a silver screen staple for over 60 years now, James Bond actually got his start in books, specifically 1953's Casino Royale by author Ian Fleming. Unlike the high-octane, gadget-filled Bond of the movies, Ian's Bond was a far grittier, more introspective character deeply embedded in the Cold War espionage of his time. He wasn't indestructible or even particularly likable. He was a flawed, calculating man doing a dangerous job in a dangerous world. By 1962, Fleming had written a series of Bond novels, and the character's popularity among readers propelled him to the big screen in Dr. No, starring the now legendary Sean Connery. Since then, the role of Bond has been played by a parade of iconic actors, most recently, of course, being Daniel Craig. With each new casting, the Bond series seemingly hits a reset button, crafting a fresh continuity for each performer designed to keep the character relevant for every new era. The casting of Bond is a big deal. Assuming you don't get Lazenby, playing James Bond forever changes an actor's career and public perception. Because you're not just starring in the movie, you are becoming the face of one of the biggest franchises in cinema history. Tons of names have been thrown around over the years as to who will replace Daniel Craig since his emotional farewell in No Time to Die. Whoever takes on the role now will pick up the torch and carry the series into its next iteration. But what if I told you that the next James Bond could just be the last? You see, starting in 2035, the original James Bond character from the Fleming novels is set to officially enter the public domain, at least in most non-US territories. Believe it or not, the suave super spy who's battled megalomaniacs and dodged death traps for decades will soon be free for anyone to use. This seismic shift could spell the end of the exclusive Bond franchise as we know it. Because 10 years might seem like a long time, but at the rate that it takes to produce a big-budget action film, assuming the higher-ups cast a new James Bond today and immediately jumped into production, they'll be lucky to get like 3 new Bond movies at most before the doors are flung open and unofficial adaptations of the character can begin. And seeing as how the powers that be can't even decide a general direction for the character, much less finish a script, it's looking more and more likely that whoever dons the tux next will be the last to wear it all by himself. Now, there's a huge caveat to all of this, of course. In the United States, home of Hollywood and still the largest film industry in terms of revenue, the Bond character will still be protected by one of the most restrictive copyright laws on the planet, keeping commercialization of the character there under lock and key until 2049, but practically everywhere else, he'll be fair game. And remember again that we're talking about the original iteration of the character, the book Bond, so any character or story details from later cinematic iterations will still be protected. But assuming the laws don't change, for the first time ever, anyone will be able to adapt, reimagine, or reinterpret the suave super spy without needing permission from MGM, Amazon, or the Fleming estate. This not only will reshape the Bond franchise, but maybe even the entertainment landscape as a whole. To try and wrap your mind around the potential future of James Bond, we can look to other iconic characters that over the years have entered the public domain. It may seem bizarre to think about right now, but in less than a decade, the character James Bond may find himself in the same boat as characters like Sherlock Holmes. An official version may still exist, but there will also be a wide array of unique interpretations of the character. In the near future, 007 could flourish as a cultural chameleon, embodying whatever vision a creator chooses. In 2022, A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh entered the public domain in the United States, spawning projects like the rather odd film Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey. Similarly, in 2024, a version of Mickey Mouse from Steamboat Willie became public domain too, prompting several other low-budget horror-themed reinterpretations of the beloved character. Most of these unlicensed creations have, admittedly, been very bad, but that doesn't mean that they'll always be. James Bond could follow a similar trajectory. When the character initially enters the public domain, there will undoubtedly be a lot of low-budget, low-effort slop masquerading as Bond stories, but over time, there may also be a lot of good versions too, because the possibilities become endless. Ian Fleming purists for years now have clamored for a period piece Bond movie that returns the character to what he was originally, instead of the gadget-filled, over-the-top spectacles that the on-screen Bond has become. Soon, independent filmmakers could do just that without needing to have their license to film authorized. So with the clock ticking to 2035, this places extraordinary pressure on the current search for the next James Bond. But more than finding the right actor, producers face a deeper challenge, defining what Bond should represent in his final exclusive outings. Do they double down on the gritty modern realism that defined Craig's era? Or should they embrace a more fantastical, escapist take, reminiscent of Roger Moore's tenure? Do they make it a period piece that takes the character back to its roots? Whatever they decide, these films, for better or worse, will serve as the swan song for the official Bond, likely the last iteration to be made before the character truly becomes a free agent. In the creative world, change is inevitable, even for a cultural titan like 007. And yeah, while the idea of multiple unofficial Bonds might feel jarring at first, history tends to show that iconic stories and characters thrive with iteration. Who knows, James Bond entering a canon-free era may just ensure his relevance for centuries to come. Who knows what the character may look like in a few decades. After all, once open to reinterpretation, there's nothing that says you can't make him a cartoon, put him in the distant future. Hey, he doesn't even have to be British. He doesn't even have to be human. Yes, there's going to be a ton of bad takes on him, but you know what? Once the character's out on the fringe, someone might just come along and deliver a truly brilliant take on what it means to be
Bond. James Bond.
Got creative ideas of your own? Need a place to share them? Why not build a website with this video's sponsor, Squarespace? They can help you put together a beautifully designed website in no time thanks to their all-new design intelligence, giving you access to easy-to-use tools so that you can build a site that feels uniquely you, no coding required. Whether you're showcasing your art, stories, or business, your vision will shine. If you want to start your own podcast, Squarespace has got you covered with audio blocks. Plus, you can sell stuff from courses to videos to music or memberships. You can get started today by going to squarespace.com and starting a free trial. Then, when you're ready to launch your site in full, head over to squarespace.com/Austin McConnell to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain.